जी 3, 2, 1, and we go live on YouTube in a second. Yeah, this is a good thing. Yeah, we just sit and chat. We are friends, and we need to give back to society a lot of what we received from them.
Read.
All right, so we are live now. Webinar is now streaming live on YouTube. So good evening and welcome to this webinar, and good morning, Krishnan. At your place, it's morning. So good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Namaste to everyone who's watching us, and welcome to this talk, That's Life. And I have with me my good friend, my buddy from school, Mr. T.R. Krishnan from Atlanta, US. So welcome, Krish.
Thank you, Atul. Appreciate it. I'm looking very excited. Happy to be here.
All right, we are happy to have you here, Krish. And Krish, I'd like to start you off with something about childhood. Would you like to tell us about your early days in the beautiful steel city, Jamshedpur? And we take it from there.
That's really taking me to some era that I think my memory cells have probably forgotten what they were like. Oh, this is Jamshedpur in the 60s and 70s, which is where all of us grew together, went to school. And I think it was probably one of the best times of our lives. This Jamshedpur was a beautiful place growing up. I just think that the friends we made, the school that we went to, the things that we did both for studies, entertainment, and everything else, they formed a foundation for us, which I think was very, very helpful. So very fond memories of that. And I think if I go back in time, good Lord, you're one of my oldest friends. So, and we haven't lost touch.
Yes.
That speaks volumes.
That's the beautiful part. So, Krish, I'd like to ask you, what are the 3 things that you think our school gave us, which we have used throughout our lives and found useful, and we still find them useful. And we would like everyone to have these 3 things that we got from our teachers, from our parents, from our school, from our childhood.
So it's a great question, Atul. I think, as I said, foundation was laid over there, right? And so what did our school give us? First, I think we were very privileged to have gone to Loyola High School. And the reason I say that is in Jamshedpur, it was one of the 2 schools that were there that was really high-end education. In those days, I think the fees was something like 35 rupees, which was
a princely sum.
It was a princely sum. And
hi, Etsy. Hi, Etsy. Etsy is here.
All right.
Hi, Etsy.
Etsy, good to see you. And these are all old friends from our school. So this is fantastic. And I'm very sure each one of us
and
will have...
please hang on, guys. Later on, I'll give you a chance to interact, and we'll all interact together also. Perfect. Yes, Krish, please go on.
All right. So back to the school. If you think about the quality of the education, the faculty over there, the dedication that each and every one of them put into the students, we still go back and we have fond memories of how they taught us, what they taught. So the quality of education, the sincerity with which the teachers approached it, and just the fact that, it was something that was a very strong foundation is the number one thing that was there.
Hey, MS Ashok is also here.
Lovely, lovely.
Yes, go on, Krish.
Yeah, you asked me for 3, so I'm going to give you 3. I probably have 20.
Yes.
The second,
as we go along.
Yes. The second thing I think the school brought about was, it was not just academic. There was sports, and the school was very active.
And Krish, that reminds me, you won the badminton championships.
Yes, a very long time.
Yes, you were the badminton champ.
a very, very long time ago, my friend.
Yes, and I used to go to the badminton stadium and I used to watch you play, and you were very good, my friend.
Yes,
Maybe
long
so
time
many
ago.
opportunities didn't exist at that time. Otherwise, we would have seen you in the nationals and internationals too. So I
Oh,
remember.
there's a story behind that, I'll tell you.
Hmm.
But I think the third thing, so besides the academics, there was sports.
Sports.
But here is the third thing which I think I gained the most from.
Hmm.
We had the number of clubs that we had,
Hmm.
from astronomy to biology to chemistry to philately to numismatics to
Yes,
name it, and it was
numismatics. People won't even know what it means.
there. Yeah. Yes.
Can you tell them? Can
Yeah,
you tell our audience?
it is coin collection
Coin
for people
collection.
who don't know what it is, but there was a club. There were probably five of us nerdy.
Philately and numismatics.
Yeah. So stamp collection is philately. So
First day covers Bistupur Post Office.
I still have those collections, by the way.
Yes.
So if you think about it, see the richness of that education and what that then does. That foundation that I keep coming back to is the breadth of all these things coming together. So it's not just about book learning, guys. It's a lot about every different thing that you get exposed to, and that exposure is something that builds a level of curiosity, which is very, very helpful. So those are my three. I think, if I may ask you, what was it that helped you with your school foundation, and what do you think of the school?
Yeah,
What did
I'll
it?
tell you at the end because I'm coming to my next question, which
Okay.
is a very, very important question for everybody and especially for the young people who are watching this. So, Krish, please tell me, ours was an all boys school. Now, today it's a co ed school. So, do you think we missed something growing up, or we did not grow up the way we should have? You know, if we had a co ed school, do you think things would have been a little different and our development would have been better? Or, how did that affect us?
Well, the short answer is yes, I think we did miss out.
Hmm.
But honestly, if I look back on time, it's not like we have been left with some scars of the past, which we are dealing with psychological things over here. That's not the case. But what would have been different? What would have been better? We
Huh.
were just so awkward talking to girls. We just didn't even know how to talk, how to approach. We would gawk and giggle and
That's
stumble,
what.
stumble. And
Ogle.
so yeah, we would stare. They were like objects that were there, and we just couldn't talk. And we were just, very, very immature, if you ask me. And if you had a co-ed school, I think it creates a dynamic. You appreciate women better. You get to know them better. You understand the other sex without having to wait to get into college, to get into a co-ed college and everything else. Uh, and last but not the least, well, I'm sure it comes with other drama, which I think we probably avoided because we were happy and doing our own little thing and weren't entangled in anything else. But at the same time, I think it's important to have co-ed education.
Absolutely. I think it brings about an overall development of anybody as a person
Right.
to be in a co-ed. So, Krish, I think we need to move on from Jamshedpur. And I remember when we finished our 10th, those were very turbulent times for the state of Bihar. That is where Jamshedpur was then, and now it's in Jharkhand. So, Jai Prakash Narayan's Andolan and emergency in 75. So, sessions were very late. St. Xavier's College, Ranchi used to be the favorite place where Loyalians went, another Jesuit institution. So, you went to the south, I went to the south, you went to Vivekananda College, I went to MCC, Chennai. And from there, I moved to Pilani and you moved to St. Stephen's. And members of the audience, let me tell you, Krish has schooled at two of the best institutions in the country. Three, Loyola School included, Vivekanand also, then four. But these two, St. Stephen's College, Delhi, for a BA honors in economics, and Delhi School of Economics, another institution where it's not so easy to get in. And Krish, let me also tell you that I had also got admission to St. Stephen's BA Honors Economics. And at the same time, I had a call from BITS and I chose BITS. Otherwise, we would have studied together in St. Stephen's also.
Yep.
So, Krish, tell us a little more about your life in Delhi. I remember visiting you there once and you taking me out to Mall Road, and we had bun tikki in the night. And
You were too
probably
poor to afford anything else.
yes. So tell us something about Delhi and how it changed you.
Okay, so I think probably that was the time that I got exposed to so much more. Being in the capital was a very important thing. Now, keep in mind, this is at a time, we're talking early 80s here. Sorry, late 70s.
Late
Uh,
70s and then early 80s. Yeah.
and everybody was encouraged to study either engineering or medicine because there
Yes.
were no other careers.
Hmm.
So I remember that I had to go through a hell of a lot of convincing at home to say, I'm going to do economics. And my father said, and what kind of job does that give you? So it was a very interesting question. It was a hard sell. That was the first thing that I had to do to say, look, a lot of the IAS, IFS, IPS officers come out of St. Stephen's and they go to the academy and do all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Plus, mine was an interest in going abroad and doing a PhD in economics. So really where I started out was I needed to get the best education in India to get my grounding. And that's what brought me to Delhi. Now, what are the other things that Delhi brought about? As I said, I used to go to JNU, which is the heart of the socialist thinking hotbed. So I got exposed to all the different thinking and groups of people and how the protests would start in Delhi and how they were so active. And then I had the elitist on the other side, which was St. Stephen's and the snobbish approach, so to speak, where academia was the thing, and you couldn't be seen marching in these little things. But I wanted to bring a little bit of both because there is no absolute, right? There is a little bit of mix and match. Delhi also had theater and the drama in schools over there were fantastic. I think that's where I used to spend a lot of time between Spick McKay, the cultural
Beautiful.
music thing, and I was very, very active in music. I actually was the president of the music society in my college,
Wow.
and used to interact with all the artists and bring them to college. So starting with the Dagar brothers to anybody else, Bhimshen Joshi, all these folks were people who we brought in. So the cultural expansion was something that was extremely valuable for me at that point in time. So I guess I grew up, maybe.
Yes, we all did probably when we went to college. And then how did you go to D school?
So part of it. So St. Stephen's was bachelor's in economics. Delhi School was my master's, and the whole thing was from D school. This next step was to go to the US and do my PhD.
Okay.
I stopped short, but there were some very deliberate reasons. And I think when I finished my MA, I kind of looked at it saying, this is way too theoretical. This is not applied economics, and applied economics was something I wanted to practice. So I stopped to say, let me go work in industry for a few years and then figure out what I want to recalibrate. So that's why I stopped after my MA.
And you never thought of going in for the civil services exam, UPSC? No.
No, never. Actually, I think I didn't even think of IIM as an option. So the MBA was one of the chosen paths. For me, it was actually truly, it was headed straight to my PhD. That was my single focus at that point in time. And so I said, no, don't change that focus. And I worked towards that, but I think I had to take a detour because I had to take pause, because there are times when you look at life and you're saying, is this really what you want to do? And so those were the crossroads. And when I stopped, I said, okay, let me go work for a year or so, get some experience under my belt, and then figure out whether I want to do my PhD, MBA, or whatever else.
Great. And Krish, then after that, I remember we met while you were working in the IT department
That's right.
of Tin Plate Company of India Limited.
That's right.
So now I'm a little confused, from St. Stephen's and then D School and then on to TCIL and IT. So how did you get into IT?
So this was, I think, part stubbornness, part a challenge to myself. But the most important thing was, as I was working with a tin plate company, I was getting trained in all the different departments. Now, at that point, computers was just a
So
little
were you
dark.
a management trainee?
I
You
was
were
a
a
manager.
management trainee. Perfect.
Yeah. And so
Perfect.
I was getting a good grounding on everything, right? Sales, marketing, finance, accounting, name it, HR, production. So in the shop floor and everything else. And I got a little round with the technology department as well. There was this little grubby black dark corner hole in the office, and all they did was ran a tape every month to do payroll.
Hmm.
Uh, but they were investing in some computers at that point in time, and it was really for the IIT guys. It was sacred ground, and nobody else other than IIT people were allowed over there. So that's where the stubbornness came in, saying, if an IIT guy can do it, so can I. Uh, and so I went and talked to my managing director, and I said, I want to be given a chance. He says, you know nothing of computers. I said, give me 6 months.
Hmm.
So 6 months of brutal self-learning, reading
Wow.
manual.
At
Uh,
that time,
at
when we
that
didn't
time,
have too many resources.
nope, these were
Today you have the world with you.
yes, no
Quickly.
cell phones, no internet, no nothing. These were those ugly code books that were there, which was in black and white and ugly font and terrible paper. Working through it till 2, 3 in the morning every day for 6 months, and I got myself a permanent job with the technology department. So it was fun, and I think I discovered I had a passion for technology, so it worked out pretty well.
And how has it been after that? Post that, have you remained in the same area or you have changed?
I have changed my colors a few times since.
Hmm.
So, as I said, economics to computers to came to the US with my computers, did a lot of computing work, but then I moved to the business side of things.
Okay.
And for me, it was very important to understand how the P&L works, the language of business. How do you make money? How do you actually get to it? And it became more important for me at that point in time to say, and how do I apply technology to run a business better? So that was this next transition. And I actually worked in a nuclear power plant for a long time, did a lot of different things over there. And then I went to GE aircraft engines, and I went to NASDAQ, and I went to a few places, and finally ended up in a bank.
So, can you
Uh,
tell us what all you did at these various places?
sure. Uh,
Yeah.
I'll go through it in rapid fashion, Atul. I think there's a lot of detail, but I don't think
Yeah, no, just a snapshot,
okay.
so that the audience would understand your journey, how you transitioned
Okay.
from, one place to another.
Okay.
And
So
I would also like you to, in the end, show us the big picture, how it all added up.
sure. Okay. All right. So while technology was my passion in template, and while it was a stubbornness and a dare kind of thing, I actually started to enjoy it a lot. And then I realized that the limitations of computing in India at that point in time were fairly limited, and I had to go abroad if I wanted to actually expand my skill set a little bit more. Again, we're talking 90s now, and the dot-com boom hadn't taken place.
Yes.
The offshoring and things that India is doing today had not taken place. So context is important. You're looking at
Yeah,
something
it
which is
was more of body shopping those days.
correct. That's all. People would send programs over here, but the rest of the interesting work was kept back in the US. So when I came over here, I started doing the same thing basically that I was doing in India. But very soon, the transition was to say, all right, why am I doing this? What is this technology being applied for? And I needed to understand the other side of the equation because the curiosity never stopped. So for me, it was like, all right, who's doing what? Why do they want this program versus something else? How are they coming up with this strategy? How are they thinking about this to say, where does it take them? What's the competition doing? So those things started to become more and more important as I started to understand, because only then can you apply technology to achieve those results. So where did I start off with? I think I'd come from a manufacturing background. I started in manufacturing in the US, and it was in Michigan at that point in time. From there, I went to a brewery, which was actually a fantastic job. Every day we would drink the day's brew, and you know, probably not very good for your health, but I think it was fun. Uh, then I went to GE Aircraft Engines, as I said, again with manufacturing. But at this point in time, we were getting out of core manufacturing. We were talking about how GE Aircraft Engines itself, and actually this was in the days of Jack Welch, who was taking GE to greater heights with his, be the best in the industry or you don't be in business kind of thinking. So it was a very aggressive industry. And from there, you started to see that waste was not something that was easily tolerated in these economies. So computing became very essential to how every one of these things were being brought
addressed.
about. Yep. From there, I went and did a little stint in NASDAQ. Now, NASDAQ, it was actually an organization called NASD, National Association of Security Dealers. What it really does for a living is every day's trades that were taking place in the NASDAQ would get sent across in the night to NASD. And over there, the algorithms would be run to figure out where the fraud was, where insider trading was, right? So this is my first exposure now to fraud. This is my exposure to criminals. This is my exposure to cybersecurity. So again, if you think about the journey, it's breadth, it's increasing in breadth. It's still technology. It's still technology applications, but it is different applications in different places, right? Went to a nuclear power plant after that. Very similar. How do you protect the safety and integrity? How do you make sure that in the event of a true nuclear disaster, that safety and security will follow? All done with technology again. So different exposures to say all these things to connect. And I'll come back to your foundational question saying, so how, this, you sound like a driftwood. You just went from one place to another to another. Each one was a learning curve. Each one was an experience. Each one was something which turned around and gave me a foundation where I can apply that now to any industry, any vertical, any place that I go, and I can bring in thoughts that others have either already done or, learn something new, which a new vertical is doing. So banking was my last stop before I actually took a retirement from that career.
Banking.
Yes. And that was a credit card business. And it was a small business lending operation, but it was billions of dollars. So again, technology to business to everything else. So I actually was running the business then.
Oh. So Krish, tell me now, see, I have a lot of students who are studying MBA, who are doing their PGDM. And even before they take admission to these courses, they are so bothered about the specialization and I want to do this. And they don't know whether they have the aptitude for it, whether they would do well there. And they don't even know how that specialization actually works. So, how important is this thing? What is more important when you are studying? These specializations and academics and such things are more important, or what you become as a person, what you are as a person, and what are the basic skills that you learn through which you would be able to go to any specialization and do justice, because that's what I see you've done. You've
Yes.
had some foundational skills with you, and with those skills, you've been able to get all the kills.
So it's a great question, Atul. I think if I think about it, for the longest time, specialization has been touted as the way to be. So you need to be very deep in a subject. And it is very important that there is a career path. There is a reason why you need people who are specialized, who can actually do a lot of the things that they do, because they feed the rest of the industry with the knowledge, right? But of late, there's a lot of literature that is being published, which actually starts to show a very interesting thing. They talk about how a horizontal education brings about a different thought process where you're able to connect the dots from different places. And therefore, generalization skills are very important. I'll give you an example of this. Uh, Anthropologists have been studying this for a fairly long period of time. And what they say is the person who gets to be the general manager, the CEO, the leader of any organization cannot be single dimensional, cannot be a generalist, unless you're running something which is a pure, specialized shop, and you need, you're building vaccines, let's put it that way, right? You're building vaccines, you need specialists, you need people who know what they're doing, you need the depth of knowledge. But if you're a CEO of a large swath of companies around the world today, generalists are preferred, and generalists are preferred for a different reason. And not just because it's you don't know anything about the industry. You need to know something about the industry. You need to understand the different concepts and tie and connect the dots. That becomes the valuable thing. There's a lot of research. In fact, I would probably recommend a book to folks if they are interested. There is a book called Range, RANGE. It actually speaks to the value of generalization. And it actually talks about this in two dimensions: Tiger Woods versus Roger Federer. And they talk about how Tiger Woods was, from the age of 7 months, he was given a club in his hand, and he was just taught to get better and better and better and better at golf. Golf was his thing. That's exactly what he specialized. Federer, on the other hand, used to play soccer, used to play tennis, used to play basketball, didn't know what he wanted to do. But if you have seen some of the interviews with Roger Federer, he will tell you that the things that he did with his soccer, the things that he did with his basketball, played very heavily into how he approached tennis and how he became good at it.
Made him what he is.
Yeah, he was a late stage tennis player. It was 17, 18 by the time he actually started.
One of the greats, all-time greats.
Yep.
And I love the guy's demeanor,
Yeah, he's gentle. I mean,
yes.
That's so again, that's the other part of this, right?
Yes.
Not just about career and success as to what you do in a job. It's who you become
are as a person.
It's far more important.
Yes, that's far more important. That was one of the things that our school gave us.
Yes.
Very true. Now, we have viewers on YouTube also, and there is a question that has come to me. Rahul Kumar has asked me the question. And our participants here on the webinar, you are also free to send us your questions in the Q&A or on chat, and we'll take them. So, Krish, this is a slightly, very specific question to do with the Indian education system. So Rahul Kumar is saying, sir, BCA program के बारे में कुछ tips दीजिएगा. Tips about the Bachelor of Computer Application program. It's an undergrad thing which students get into after +2.
Okay. So all these are foundational courses and very good. You shouldn't minimize these courses. They teach you special skills. They teach you specialized skills. They give you the tools, the techniques. You will learn programming languages. You will learn how to write good code, how to write efficient code. And that is a good place to start with computers. So don't try and become a generalist before you've understood a few of the foundational elements. So I don't want everybody to think that becoming a generalist is the right thing. You need to have the basic skills to do this. So where did I start? I started with programming. From programming, I got into systems analysis and design, which is, okay, how do you sit and talk to the business, understand what they want, come back, understand what the technology should do, and design a program, then write the program, and then test it and operationalize. From a systems analyst, I became a project manager who was managing the systems analysts and the programmers. So all these are disciplines and skills. So back to your specific questions, your course will be very clear and specific. The syllabus would be laid out to say, This is what you learn in your first semester, second semester, etc. And there is a method to that madness. They do that very deliberately because it starts to give people a skill set with which you enter the workforce. And so don't minimize that. That entry job is very critical, and getting those skills are what gets you ahead of the rest of the school. I hope that answered the question. If hopefully if there is a follow-up, would be happy to take that on.
Hi, Sandeep. So nice to see you also, buddy. Sandeep
Sandeep.
is here. See, my dogs are also welcoming Sandeep. Great. So, Krish, that this brings me to one question. You talked about safety and about systems and such stuff. See, in a lot of movies, I've seen that these people want to get in somewhere and they go with a small tablet or a laptop, and somebody, presses some keys and then they just say, "We are in." Is that possible? Does it really happen?
It's not that simple. Hollywood obviously glamorizes some
Bollywood
of it.
also. Bollywood copies Hollywood,
Hollywood also
so
will do that.
Holly
Yes.
and Bolly.
If life were that straightforward and simple, then people would be stealing money from all.
Absolutely. I get, amazed by this, that how do they do that?
But but do not minimize the criminal mindset. So there are hacks that are there all across the globe. There are cartels that are there which operate. And I'll share a couple of very interesting stories when I was in the credit card business. There was a Hungarian criminal outfit, mafia, that was there. And they started operating with stealing social security numbers. What they would do was, when, before anybody was even live, they would create artificial birth certificates. They would create artificial names. They would systematically give them a social security, which is really your identity here in the US, like your Aadhaar card is in India. And then they would actually create a credit profile for these people and make them look like they were now highly employed and everything else. Make them apply for credit cards. You would get approved because of your credit history and your profile that you've created. And then they would defraud the company, right? So this is just one example. And by the way, the cybersecurity is probably one of the biggest career paths today in anybody's life. If you are good, if you're good at security, if you understand how to get ahead and stay one step ahead.
You need to be a better hacker.
You need to be a better hacker, because there are people who are trying to get into all the vaults that are there. And if you think of a more digital economy, the consumer data, which is all of us, our data, is at risk, which is why it's very, very important for every organization to keep one step ahead. So people are spending tons of money on this. If there is anybody who's young, starting a career, wants to know which fields to specialize in, so that they can actually be good at it, cybersecurity and fraud prevention.
Beautiful. That would be a big area, and I think need for good professionals in that area would continue to rise.
Absolutely, it's never going. Computers aren't going away.
Yes, they are not going away, and that need would always be there. So, Krish, it has been so nice talking to you about all these things. Now, I want to talk about a couple of things which are not connected to careers and business and such stuff, but which is the stuff of life,
Yep.
So, tell me a little more about happiness and what has given you happiness throughout and what continues to keep you happy.
This is where the philosophy, by the way, I think the learning never stops, right? I'm only 60. I'm still learning as to how I get even better every day with whatever is left in our journey.
Absolutely.
But I go back to school. I go back to our school, and I was actually in the Interact Club. I was the president of the Interact Club in my
And I was the vice president.
That's right. And if you remember, every Thursday afternoon, we would get onto our cycles and go all the way to an orphanage.
Yes, we taught kids there.
We taught kids over there.
Kadma, was it in Kadma?
It was
It
in
was
Kadma.
in Kadma.
Yes. And
Yes.
I go back to that. It starts to give you a perspective in life. It starts to give you the advantages that, a lot of us have, and we probably don't even realize that we have it. So when you start to take a look at life with that lens, you suddenly say you have nothing to complain about. You have absolutely no reason. So when you start to feel low, when you start to think about this thing, sometimes there are events that do happen which get you into places like that, and I will not minimize that in any form or fashion. But for a lot of people who haven't been beset with that kind of stuff, when you start to feel low, you're probably just getting more inward oriented and selfish and thinking about yourself, as opposed to thinking bigger picture, saying you have a lot more than a lot of other people do, and therefore don't just think about yourself, think
Don't
bigger,
just sit and sulk.
think beyond, right? So
Excellent perspective.
yeah, Interact Club was that. I think I did a lot with the Red Cross when I was in college, and
College.
the food distribution, flood relief activities. So,
Now,
it was,
now that brings me to something.
yeah,
You're still there in. You're doing something in that area even today. Hunger prevention.
yes.
You tell us a little more about that.
So there are two
Two
that actually,
foundations.
yeah, two foundations actively involved in getting into a third one.
Hmm.
Uh, I have basic premise, man. Nobody should go hungry. It's a simple thing, right?
Yes.
And if you think about, so invariably when you think of the US, you think that there's no hunger over here. People have the means. People don't have the problems that is there in poorer countries, and India has a lot more. Now,
Hmm.
I think the problems are more amplified in India for sure, but here I'm very actively involved with some of the local charities to say there are people who genuinely cannot work. It's not a I
Hmm.
choose not to work. There are handicapped people. The society, interestingly, does not have a good support system. Yes, there is a welfare system, and it does some things for some people, but a lot of people are out there who have been left without anything. And for them, getting a meal, and right now with the job situation that is there in
Yes.
the it's hard. So it
It's very
starts
hard.
with, how do you give money? How do you go and help prevent wastage? So this is an industry. If you think about the amount of wastage that takes place, it is phenomenal.
Massive.
From the time that the food is grown in the farm and what drops on the ground and is wasted, what is not the right shape for the market to consume and thrown away is the wastage. What gets destroyed in the transportation and by the time it reaches the stores is
That's
a huge
also wasted.
wastage. From the store, how many of them rot before they are purchased and brought to your fridge? An area of wastage. From your fridge to what you consume and what you throw away in your trash is a wastage. And the hotels are another example of how they throw the food out on a nightly basis. So I'm actively involved in these organizations. There are a lot of litigations too. You just can't take the food from a hotel and give it to a homeless shelter, because if something goes wrong and people fall sick, the legalese is just phenomenal. So there are ways in which you overcome this. So that is one big area where I think it is, people should not go hungry. It's a basic need.
Yeah,
It's like air
that's
and
very
water.
important.
Yeah. The other thing is, my wife was very active in an autistic school. She used to teach the children who were autistic and disabled and had other issues. And I think we still actively go there and do things with them. Uh, and the third thing, Atul, which is, I think, the last National Geographic actually summarizes a little bit of this, where they talk about the flesh trade that is going
Hmm.
on
Hmm.
from Bangladesh, and how young girls are
Yes.
just
Nepal,
snatched away.
Bangladesh, even India,
Yeah,
all
and
the third world countries.
Atlanta is the third largest flesh trading center in the U.S.
Oh my God.
And it's just it's mind-boggling, right? So when you start to think about these things, this is where you start to say, how can I help? Where can I get engaged? How can I support law and order? How can I support organizations that need the real funding to go fight these people? And when they do rescue these people, rehabilitating them and bringing them back to normalcy and getting them back to getting a job and getting them functioning and being independent, are all very, there are people who do this for a living, and hats off to them. These are the kind of things that I think I would love to dedicate the rest of my working years, so to speak.
Wonderful, beautiful. So, Krish, I have another question now. See, the most important people in our lives are our family. Parents, then brothers and sisters, then wife and kids. So, our family is, of course, the most important thing to us. Now, both your kids, they are grown up, they are married, and they are well settled in their careers. Now, I'd like to know from you, while you were bringing them up, they didn't have a chance to study in Loyola or convent, and Loyola convent too may have changed over the years. So, what are the things that you were bothered about them inculcating, imbibing?
I,
And how did you go about, helping them imbibe?
so it's a great question, and especially kids growing up in the US, right?
Hmm.
uh, they can become an entitled, bratish lot if just leave them to their own these things without exposure. So one thing that we did as parents very deliberately is brought them back to India every year, and they
Hmm.
spent time with the family. They spent time traveling India. They spent time understanding things, and
Hmm.
they got to see firsthand
Hmm.
how a family and culture works.
Hmm.
The second thing is, I think early on they realized that they had seen poverty in India, and I think there is
Hmm.
I have seen both of them, sitting in the Howrah station, and they had a popcorn in their hand and they had a
And they
soda in their
gave it.
hand, and the beggars
Yeah.
started circling them. First, they didn't know what to do, and suddenly I found that both of them just turned around and gave the popcorn
Gave
away. And I said it was, and they were
wonderful.
just young; they were 5 or 6 at that point in time, but they realized that they didn't need it,
Hmm.
and the sharing was something which they learned as part of the exposure. The second thing is, I think that, look, family is strong, right? You have to do this at home. You just can't leave it to school alone. Schools do teach you things. School
That's why I
teaches you.
said, school can teach you this much, but family can teach you,
Yes.
much more, so much more.
Yeah, so family and friends became a big thing, and they became part of our charity organization drives and
Wow.
things. They'd come with us, right? So they were active in that whole thing, and then they themselves, once they got to college, started to join in. In fact, uh, I'll give you this story. My daughter was in New York, and she was walking back to her apartment one
Hmm.
evening, and she was actually in tears, and I'll tell you why. And
Hmm.
she saw this homeless man asking for money. So she opened her wallet, and the last $20 that was sitting in her wallet, she just took it and she gave it to this
Gave it.
man. And so this homeless man looks at her and he says, "But child, why are you crying?"
Hmm.
And she says, "I just got laid off."
Ah,
So the homeless guy, in his
just imagine.
infinite wisdom, turns around and he says, "Child, I don't need this as much as you do." So he gave her back the $20. And it was like, wait, this is so. First thing is,
So touching.
it was it I mean, they are, of course she knows father was there to help her out,
Hmm, of
but
course.
uh, I am very happy that they can think beyond themselves and do things for others, because and they are both very active in fundraising for uh, water projects in Africa, or right now they are both actively engaged in the Black Lives Matter program to make very sure that they are raising the right kind of
Beautiful.
fund. And they're putting money out of their own pockets to do some of these things. Not that they have a lot of discretionary income.
No, that's when your real intention shows, when
Yep.
you are willing to spend money, and more than money, when you are willing to go and work, spend time.
That's for the younger crowd, and when you have the
Yeah,
time,
that's much more valuable.
it teaches you more than you giving it. You learn.
Yes,
It teaches you.
no doubt about that. See, that exposure to that orphanage while we were in the Interact Club, I think that was the time when the seeds of becoming a teacher started, taking root in my mind. And then they had done one small survey or aptitude test kind of a thing when I was in college. And there also the first vocation that came out, as my interest was teaching.
Right. And
So
teaching is giving back.
yeah, teaching is giving back, and that is what made me happy then. It makes me happy now also. So these are things, when you go out and do things, then things would speak to you and
Right.
tell you which way to go sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes the decisions
It's not
come
about
out to be,
accumulating money. It's not about accumulating money
it's
or
not
gaining
about
titles.
anything else.
Yeah. Those things are meaningless after a point.
Yes. So, Krish, we've talked a lot about various things. Now, I would like to ask you about a time in your life when the going was really tough and you actually felt you'd made a wrong decision or come, the wrong way, and then how you fought and overcame. Because this happens to all of us. It's nothing, that
True.
you can do about it.
So very true thing. Actually, it goes back to my early days
Hmm,
uh, when I started working at Tinplate.
hmm,
And remember, I was at crossroads. My
hmm,
PhD, which I had focused on to say I'm going to get that, suddenly became not a tangible thing or not something that I was as passionate about. And suddenly it was like, okay, what do I do next?
hmm,
And when I joined Tinplate, it was actually an organization which was a sick company. It wasn't
hmm,
a company that was doing very well at that point in time.
hmm,
And I still remember the reasons why I joined. I won't go into that,
hmm,
but it was not a bright, sparkly company in those days. And I had to learn a lot of different things. And I was actually learning a little bit about myself too. Now, I'll give you this example because I think it's important. So think about it. St. Stephen's, Delhi School. You think you're somebody who's God's gift to mankind entering a company
yes.
like Template, which is not doing so well. So you know more than others and all that good stuff, right?
Hmm,
So one of my rotational jobs was actually in the managing director's secretariat. So I got lucky to be sitting over there.
hmm.
And I don't know if you all remember, for those of you who are from Jamshedpur, you remember this man, Ramesh Bhasin,
Yes,
who
yes.
was the
RK
managing.
Basin, of course.
And so I would sit there, and he was an extraordinary man. In fact, I think he was probably my best mentor in my life. I would sit in his office, and every Thursday he would have a darbar,
Hmm,
and the darbar would be where people from the shop floor would come in and talk to him about various things. A lot of them about personal grievances and asking for money for either their daughter's wedding.
Mr. Basin was also from St. Stephen's.
Yes.
Hmm. A very
So
large hearted man. I remember Mr. Basin, and
yes,
I'd met him and his wife on several occasions. Very large
yes,
hearted man. You're right.
very athletic man, right? So as I was sitting over there, and this darbar would be, people coming in asking for loans for various things. My
Favors.
getting married, Kheti died in this thing. I need some money to send back to the village, and so on and so forth.
Hmm,
So, and all those things would be something that I would turn around, make notes, and he would say, "Yeah, go get them this much, that much," and I would execute all that. Well, one fine day, this elderly Sardarji gentleman walked into the thing, and before he could speak, Mr. Bhasin turned and looked at me, and he said, "Krish, do you remember this guy?"
hmm,
I said, "No, sir." He says, "Look at him again.
hmm,
See if you remember him." And he said, "Nope." I said, and he turned around and he said, "This man, his name is so and so.
hmm,
His daughter's name is so and so. He
hmm,
was in this office 6 months ago.
hmm,
His daughter's wedding has taken place. He has come here to turn around and thank us for the money that we loaned for his daughter's wedding.
hmm.
You were invited to that wedding. You didn't show up for that wedding.
Ah,
I was there at the wedding and I looked around for you and you were not there." And he says, "Just remember this. If you can't even remember the people who you work with, you're not fit to be anybody in life."
yeah.
Right? I'll tell you what, I am so happy I stopped at Tinplate for that 1-2 years that I was sitting in that secretariat.
Learn
That's
these
the one
things.
thing that I turned around and I learned. And it was a hard lesson because guess what? Your ego went, you were that small.
Mm.
Uh, and, but it was the right reason because I was a young, stupid lad who hadn't been exposed to some of the bigger and finer things in life yet.
Realities of life.
And so it became something that, and I would watch him.
Mm.
Even if there was a party, he would go put his arm around the waiter at the who was serving the dishes. He knew his name. He knew what he was
Wow.
going through and
That's
everything
the
else.
kind of connect he had with people.
Exactly. Right. So
And he loved, to
yeah,
connect with them, be with them, help them out. Beautiful.
that's that's the kind of person you want to become at some point.
Yes, yes,
Much bigger than yourself. Don't be included
absolutely.
at any point in time. So yes, those were dark days, but I'll tell you what, I learned a lot, and I saw him turn around the company, which was part of my other learning, which went on to say, yeah, you know what, more than my PhD, go do this because
That's a PhD.
yeah, that's a PhD there.
Yes, yes, of course. So great. So Krish, we've had some wonderful, anecdotes from you. We've really enjoyed ourselves. Now, what I'll do is I'll promote our friends to become panelists, and these friends can now ask you questions.
Uh-oh. These are people.
Okay. So there are people here on the chat. You can ask questions, please. You can unmute yourself and ask questions. So Krish is here to answer them. Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Hey, nice to see both of you.
Hi, Dinesh.
Hey, Dinesh.
Welcome. Tell us,
Hey,
Dinesh. Please.
hey, yeah,
Hi,
hi, Chris.
Sandeep.
Yeah, fascinating
Sandeep,
to hear
hi.
from you.
Hi, how are you guys? It was really
Good,
nice to see
good.
you both, although I did not attend the first half of it. So, but
I'll send you the recording.
I'll go back to the recording and take a look.
Sure, I'll send you the recording.
It was really nice venture.
Thank you. You guys are next.
Thank you.
Where is Ashok? Ashok bhai, you can also unmute yourself.
So Dinesh,
Come
I
on
haven't
screen.
spoken
Yes,
to you.
Dinesh.
You were
Dinesh,
saying something.
question bata.
No questions, yeah, but really fascinating. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
This is a very nice format to do this. I've attended a few of these old boys from different WhatsApp groups, and they have various webinars. But this is a nice, interesting format, which is both informal, but at the same time gives you a lot of life lessons, which is hard to come by. You may be able to read many books, but this is really a very
Yeah, from the
fascinating
horse's mouth.
format. Yeah, and Krish, this is great to hear from you. Hear your journey, what your experiences have been. I think this is just a lot of food for thought. I really enjoyed listening to you. Um, yeah, if I had a question, I would only ask you, between all of this, how do you balance these life priorities, your work, your social welfare activities,
Yes.
your own health, and your sports? How do you manage to keep this, and what are the things you think you would, if at all you had a chance, where would you have invested more time and which would be less?
Oh,
Wonderful
good enough,
question.
Dinesh. It is my biggest struggle in life. Uh, I think I think the learning never stops, as you know. And I was telling Atul that I have just started to teach myself how to play the bansuri, and I'm taking some bansuri lessons during my COVID time. And I'm intro, so I'm learning Hindustani classical now and learning to play the flute. And somebody said, "You're 60. Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Hey, you never stop. Now, how do you do this? I think it's come at the cost of sleep. Unfortunately, part of it is that. But I'm trying to get better, because I think all our doctor friends will probably tell us saying that's the worst way to do it. Take a beating. You need your sleep. You need your rest. So I am trying to get better at that. That's one. But I think I try and stay away from the television as much as I can.
The most negative thing.
Yeah. So it takes away from productive time in my mind. Not that I don't do entertainment, but I compartmentalize and I say, you know what, I want this. I'm going to watch a movie, or I'm going to watch an episode of something. But I think that's one area where I don't indulge too much. I think I take the time for spending time with my dog, and the walks that I take with my dog are probably most therapeutic in my mind, where I can think and be calm and just admire the wonder that she sees in everything. Her curiosity keeps me curious, because for her, she can be looking at the same thing that she looks at every day, but she's just as excited as the previous day. There are some interesting things. But Dinesh, I think if there's any way that somebody says there is a better way to increase 24 hours in a day, I would love to get that, but there's so many things to do.
Great. Thanks a lot. That was really nice. Thank you.
Very good. Yes, Sandeep, any questions for Krish?
I was saying sleep is a variable thing. As long as you get a sound sleep for 5 to 6 hours, I think you're good.
And as long as your family gets the sound of your sleep.
Just get thrown out of my room saying, go sleep in the afternoon, you're snoring too loud.
No, I met TR, 5-6
Hilton
years
Head.
back.
At Hilton Head.
Yeah, at his house, at Sandeep's house.
Actually, my place, Ajay was traveling.
Okay. All right.
And
wow.
Here, I mean. So it was so nice to catch up with you and see you.
But see, these friendships don't go away. What you form as friendships when you're in school, those 11 years, right? If you had been a drifter, if you came in for 2 years and you went away, that bond doesn't exist. But if you've been there from kindergarten all the way till you graduated, it doesn't matter whether you talk every day or not. But when you do talk, the connections all come right back.
Yes.
That's one of the
because the roots go deep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now these two Johnnies, MS Ashok, Sandeep Grover and I, we were together in the SPO also.
That's
of course.
Well, some of our friends may not have enjoyed that.
Yes. Ashok is not able to. His camera is giving him some trouble.
Okay.
So Krish, how do I thank you? It's been a wonderful evening. You've come here, you've been candid, you've shared so much with our audience, and this kind of atmosphere, this kind of togetherness, this kind of an interaction you cannot have but with your best buddies. So it was wonderful having you here, and wish to have more interactions of this kind. And yes, thank you from my side and the audience. And I'd like to thank Dinesh, Ashok, HC, our friend Sandeep, and everybody else, everybody else who could join, and everybody else who watched and would be watching, Rahul Kumar, and everyone else. And I think we'll continue with this, and we'll again meet soon on some other topic, and we would get together and do something. So please convey my very best regards and wishes to Mona, and love to the kids and their spouses.
Thank you, Atul. It was my pleasure. This was fun, actually, and I enjoyed it. Hopefully, this is actually reminiscing our lives in so many ways.
Yes.
So that's always exciting.
Putting it in perspective. So next time, I hope one of these guys, Dinesh NIAR, MS Ashok, HC, Sandeep Grover, we'll see one of them here. All right. So with that, we are signing off for this evening, this morning, whatever. And we hope to see you again next week. So thank you very much. Bye and have a wonderful day or night.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.